What made you realize someone was actually rich? I was 19, working overnight at a 24-hour diner in Portland, the kind of place where the coffee tastes like burnt rubber and the regulars know you by name. It was a Wednesday, 3 a.m., and I was the only server on shift. Dead quiet except for the hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional semi-truck passing outside. This guy walked in wearing a faded Nike hoodie and jeans with actual holes in them. Not the designer kind, the kind you get from wearing them too long. He had a beat-up backpack that looked like it survived a war. He sat at the counter, ordered coffee and apple pie, and pulled out his phone. We started talking because there was literally nothing else to do. He asked about my classes. I mentioned I was taking community college courses during the day. We talked about random stuff. He told me about this documentary he'd watched about deep-sea fishing and how certain species migrate thousands of miles. I told him about my cat who kept knocking stuff off my shelves at exactly 6 a.m. every morning. Just normal conversation, the kind you have with a stranger when you're both killing time. Around 4 a.m., my manager Sharon stormed out of the back office, her face already red. Our overnight cook Danny had just called out sick for the third time that week. She looked at me with wild eyes and said, "You're covering the kitchen too, or you're fired. We can't afford to close and I'm not losing money tonight." I started panicking because I'd never worked a grill before. I could barely make scrambled eggs at home. The guy at the counter was just sitting there, watching this unfold like it was a show. Sharon went back to her office, slamming the door hard enough that the specials board fell off the wall. He turned to me and asked, "What do you make an hour here?" I told him $11.50 plus tips, but overnight tips were basically nothing. Maybe $20 on a good night if I was lucky. He nodded slowly, like he was doing math in his head. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. He wasn't being loud or showy about it, just casual. I heard him say, "Yeah, I need you to come to the diner on Morrison Street, the one next to the Shell station. Bring the checkbook. I don't care if you were asking," and tried to figure out how I was going to work both the front counter and the kitchen without burning the place down. About 5 minutes later, a woman in a full business suit walked through the door carrying a leather briefcase. At 4:10 a.m., in a dingy diner that smelled like old grease. She had her hair in a perfect bun and looked more awake than I'd been in 6 months. She walked straight to him and said, "You have the address for the wire transfer?" He shook his head and looked at me. "What's your full name? First and last?" I was so confused I just blurted it out. He turned to the woman and said, "Write a check for $5,000. Make it out to them." I thought I misheard him. The woman didn't even blink. She opened the briefcase, pulled out a checkbook, and started writing. Her pen made that expensive scratching sound on the paper. He said, "That should cover about a month of wages, right? Maybe more. So you can quit tonight if you want." I couldn't form words. I just stared at this check with my name printed on it. $5,000. My rent was $650 a month. My tuition was $200 a semester. He took a sip of his coffee, made a face, and said, "My overnight cook in Seattle just quit too. Last Friday. I own 14 restaurants across the West Coast. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco. I know exactly how stressful it is when someone calls out and management acts like it's your personal failure." The woman handed me the check and her business card. It was heavy cardstock. It said, "Executive Assistant to CEO, Cascade Restaurant Group." He pulled out his wallet and left a $100 bill on the counter. His total was $6.75. The pie was $4.50 and coffee was $2.25. Sharon came back out and saw the check in my hand. Her eyes went huge. She walked over and tried to grab it, saying it was inappropriate to accept gifts from customers and that the money belonged to the diner since I was on company time. The guy stood up real slow. He wasn't tall or intimidating, but something about the way he moved made Sharon stop talking. He looked her dead in the eyes and said, "If you touch that check, I will buy this diner by noon tomorrow just so I can fire you." Sharon's face went from red to white in about 2 seconds. She actually took a step backward and bumped into the coffee station. He grabbed his backpack and looked at me one more time. "Thanks for treating me like a regular person and not asking for a job. That's rare." Then he walked out into the rain. I stood there holding a $5,000 check, watching his taillights disappear down Morrison Street. The check cleared 2 days later. I quit that night and used the money to pay for my entire next semester. Never saw him again.